All right. We are back for another Well-Being Wednesday, y'all. Again, if this is your first time coming, welcome. We're super excited to have you. If this is not your first time, welcome back then. So this is the monthly segment that shows childcare providers and caregivers like yourselves simple ways that you can support your own well-being, because taking care of ourselves is in fact also taking care of others. Whether you're an early childhood educator, director, parent, or someone who just feels like a parent some days, I know I feel like that, you're sure to pick up tidbits of actionable advice about how to support your overall well-being and get back to feeling like yourself. I'm your host, Dana Creed with Be Well, Care Well Arkansas, which is a curricula concepts program that's all about supporting the well-being of childcare providers throughout the state. So today, this is the 1st of February, officially February, and a lot of times with that comes up this idea of love and giving to others, which is wonderful. And with Wellbeing Wednesday and kind of with Be Well, Care Well, we wanted to flip that on its head a little bit. So this February, we're taking the idea of love and turning it inward to see how we can show ourselves more love this month. So there are so many different ways that we can do this. We can show ourselves love. Some of us enjoy a structured self-care activity. That's me. So I like to set, 30 minutes aside each week for something. Some people like to take a warm bath once a week. For others, it might be short or spontaneous bursts, like taking a short walk around the block, or maybe road tripping suddenly to a new city in the state over the weekend. I know I've talked to some of our Be Well Care Well participants who love doing that themselves, and that's a part of their self-love and self-care routine. For some of us, it means taking care of our physical bodies by fueling them with wholesome nutrients and exercising more regularly. So whatever flavor suits you, we are here for it. We are really wanting to hear from you all as we go throughout today's Wellbeing Wednesday. Please share in the comments and in the chat either new ways and new ideas that you have for kind of turning that love inward, or ways that you already practice. We want to learn from each other, and we'll kind of shout some people out if we want to, if they're in the chat. We'd love to hear it. So we're going to get into this. We are welcoming back one of our previous Wellbeing Wednesday guests, Luis Mendoza with Power Body Soul, and I think we'll have some great conversations today. So thank you, Luis, for being here. And let's start the discussion with just kind of a little bit about what it means to turn that external love that we show others inward towards ourselves. So, what are some ways that can look, and how can we support that?
Well, thank you so much for bringing me back on here, Susanna. As always, such a great time to be here with you and this community, this environment. I absolutely love, all the love that you guys bring to this show. So I think you asked a great question. I just want to go back to the different examples that you were giving, whether it's treating yourself with love, or going and having an adventure with yourself or for yourself. All of those actions, right, they definitely speak to how do we, give ourselves that motivation, that invigorating to feed our soul, to feed our life.
Mhm.
And I think considering the fact that it is February 1st, we have officially entered into Cupid season. So we're going to be hearing everything and anything about love. And to turn that inwards, I think it's a great question, just to kind of step back and ask yourself, how do you show up for the people that you love in your own life? Like in your group of family, friends, or in your partners, are you the supportive one? Are you the helpful one? Are you always doing favors or active services? Oftentimes, if we're aware of the different love languages that that we all embody, we got to recognize the love language we tend to provide the most is the one we actually want to receive, right? So just taking a moment to just kind of be mindful of how it is that you are in your relationships. Like, for example, personally, I'm a very affectionate person. I love hugs. I love holding hands. That's the kind of person I am. So my partner, if I recognize that that's how I want to engage, to show that affection for myself, what does that mean? I might have to get a massage, or be in a sauna, or provide an experience where I am recognizing that I'm giving it to myself in order to provide those, those sense of well-being and happiness. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's important to recognize that, just having self-love in general, so it's the basis for just having a healthier, more fulfilled life. you know it affects everything from your emotions, from your
Mhm.
goals, from the way that you view yourself, right? And oftentimes what happens is that we tend to be our hardest critics. If we think about it, for everyone that's watching right now, I just want to give a quick example of what I'm talking about, and just this mental exercise. So we're going to take a couple seconds, and I want you to think about the last time you felt embarrassed. Like you did something and you're like, oh my gosh, someone saw me, I'm turning red in the face, right? So I'm just going to give a couple seconds. Once you have that in your mind, I want you to hold that thought. And now I want you to flip it and think about, when is the last time you saw someone else get embarrassed? You know, I mean, go ahead and just, and you might have, but I'm sure for most of you, you haven't the slightest clue, right? You haven't the slightest clue. And I think that that's exactly a powerful way to just reflect, that you are going to be paying attention to yourself the most. And as such, you are in charge of taking care of yourself. And you have the best availability to yourself, because you know your own likes and dislikes. You know what you're willing to tolerate and not tolerate. And therefore, how else are you going to have a great relationship with yourself than by being willing to have a conversation about what it is you want in your life?
Yeah, you brought up a couple of really interesting points. So I went on like a girls retreat kind of late last year, and a lot of it was, self-love, and I kind of heard about it. A lot of times we hear the same things over and over, but what they had talked about was the love languages, and so
Yeah.
much of that is focused externally.
Mm.
Love language that you receive or give to others. And it was the first time I had ever heard of it, but like, how are you showing love to yourself? And so it's funny because one of my main ways is also physical touch. But when I think about my own self care practices, they're kind of quality time focused, of
Yeah.
time away for myself. They're words of affirmation, like, mirror work, even of just like looking yourself in the mirror and saying
Yeah.
positive
Yeah.
things. And I'm like, like words of affirmation is also really high for me, but I don't even touch on the physical side.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do I turn that on myself? And so one of the weird things that I did when I was in that workshop was I just kind of held my own hand and I just
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
this, and it felt weird. It felt
It
really
felt
weird to
weird.
do that to myself because I was like, what am I doing? But it's like, that's how I give the love. And also, and that's kind of why today it's so much about, letting go of what, we do with or for others, but kind of like that internal self piece of, huh, quality time. And I feel, again, it's kind of go back to that embarrassment and being our worst critic. Like quality time isn't a huge one on mine.
Yes.
And I'm like,
Yes.
I'm a bad person for that, but also that's true. And so here I am setting aside all of this time
Yeah.
to be by myself. And yet I'm like, I don't feel like it's filling my cup per se. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, well, because I'm mismatching my own needs and kind of how I
Needs.
receive love for
Yeah.
myself. And so I've started doing more exercise breaks throughout the day.
Yeah.
Even though I don't want to do it, it's
Yeah.
annoying and frustrating. That is physically showing myself that
Yes.
love by taking care of myself, giving myself those feel good endorphins. And so 5 minutes of exercise might actually fill my cup and give myself more love
Yeah.
than setting aside 30 minutes of quiet time just to be by myself. Like that just might not jive with me. So it was funny that you had mentioned that
Yeah.
as
No,
well. So
that was great. I love that. I love that. A couple of points I want to point out is, you saying you fill your cup. Like you're giving yourself all the things that you consciously are aware of, and then you're like, still something's missing in the back end. And I think that that's a great opportunity to just recognize that that's self love. If you want a more tangible way to kind of just visualize it, whenever you're talking to yourself, or just in your own space, just remember that you're speaking to little you inside. I'm talking to little
oh
Louise, you're talking to little Susanna, little whoever, right? So like if there's been years of, imagine that little person, that little you, that's looking up to you, big you right now, to take care of you. You are your own parent at a certain point. And if you've been for years neglecting and neglecting and neglecting, and imagine that little boy, that little girl inside saying, mom, dad, but you never answered. What is that relationship gonna be like? Right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna trust yourself. You're not gonna be able to follow through with yourself. Confidence is gonna be low. Because what is self-confidence other than you demonstrating to yourself that I am going to take care of you. I am going to be responsible for you and your well-being, and making sure that I can provide those to the best of my ability, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if something that filled you with passion was music, and you used to play instruments or dance, and you haven't danced in the last 5 years, right? That's a love language. That's a love to yourself, recognizing that going back to, we've talked a lot about how we can go and give ourselves loves, but I think something else that's also equally important is how to remember that we have to love ourselves not just in the good moments but also in the hard moments, right? So what am I talking about? I'm talking about that negative self-talk. I'm talking about that overly critical, kind of piece of words that come out, right? And just being willing to give ourselves grace, have patience with ourselves, and being able to move forward with that in mind. Again, just think about that little person inside of you and how you would want to best treat yourself. That's why the love languages is a direct attachment to that, because that was usually formed in your youth, and being able
Mm-hmm.
to go back to that, you're able to fill that cup in the most purest sense, I believe.
Yeah, and those are some really good points, and I'm seeing some things going on in the chat of
Oh,
definitely agreeing with it. And it's interesting because so many of you all who are probably watching right now work with the little ones, right? 0 to 5 year olds probably
yeah,
is a lot of who you work with. So thinking about, and I know from just the conversations that I've had with so many of you, of like the heart that you have for children, and how you want to give them the very best. You want them to feel confident. You want them to feel self assured. You want them to feel safe. You want them to feel loved and warm. And thinking about, well, how am I treating the child, that little one, the infant toddler inside of me? And you all have that capacity for love for others. But again, coming back to this idea today of turning it inward and saying, how do I show myself that? How do I treat myself and my little child
yeah,
like I would the kids that I work with every day, that I value, that I love, and I care about, and I pour into so much? So I think it might be kind of a more tangible way for so many of you who are watching to kind of take the work that you do, this passion that you do, because it is hard work to do it,
yes,
and saying
yeah,
it doesn't just end with the external with them. It also comes to ourselves and thinking, okay, well, how do I show the children at work that they're safe? How do I show them that they're loved? What does it look like when I try to meet their needs, and seeing, okay, what can we do with that sort of thing? And I think that that's a really interesting way for us to think about, okay, how are we going to,
yeah,
look at ourselves, and how are we going to show ourselves this love? It's just kind of an interesting way that I think is more tangible for a lot of those of you who are watching today. Oh, we have some good comments
okay,
here. Let me see what we've got. And alongside that love, we have to forgive ourselves, and yes,
yeah,
give ourselves the same grace
yeah,
we'd give to others. We
yes,
also have love the idea of thinking of us as our younger little selves.
yes.
And then just got a whole bunch of smiles and hearts from Miss Monica. Good to see you
Oh,
today.
awesome,
Glad to have you on. So there's definitely a lot of resonation with that.
man.
Resonation?
I
I think that's a word.
I love that. I love, yeah, resonance for sure. Resonance for
Resonance.
sure.
There you
And
go.
you know,
That
I,
probably
I
is it.
wanna I wanna point out two things, to two popular concepts in media and memes in a sense. So like for the first one, I don't know, our audience, but there's this popular meme about Homer Simpson from The Simpsons, right? And he's
Okay.
like, he's drinking his bottle of beer and he's getting drunk or intoxicated, and he's saying that's a problem for the Homer of tomorrow, you know. And it's so funny because like ultimately I think that in this day and age there's been a lot of that, kind of like, I'm gonna do me, or I'm gonna do my best self and I'm gonna treat myself, right? That's the theme. However, you have to recognize that you treating yourself is not just you of today, it's also the you of tomorrow, right? Like that's still you, and you have to be willing to think of that in that mindset. Like, we are a continuum of all of our experiences, right? And as much as we might, make some differentiation in our mind, our body remembers. Our body remembers. It remembers that feeling of betrayal because we didn't, fulfill whatever it is that we had on ourselves, not because we couldn't, but because we made the choice not to. There was a study that was done on a survey that was conducted on kind of like old folks, like old homes, just asking like, what's your biggest regret? Kind of those kinds of questions. Like, what do you wish you could have changed? Many of the people that responded, the biggest regret most of them had was a commonality, was not knowing what could have happened, right? Not knowing what could have happened. It wasn't like all the adversity that they endured. It wasn't the different obstacles that they had to go through. It's like, as if anything, it's because of the fact that they were able to have that self-love to say, hey, I'm going to find out what I'm capable of, right? And that sometimes looks like having consistency, having routines, having mental fortitude, right? That discipline. We didn't like it when our parents would be like, do this or you're grounded, right? Because that would always be like, man, you don't love me, all that stuff. But
we remember
now,
those teenage years.
right? But now I can be grateful for those lessons, because now I am in a space of self-sufficiency where I'm able to progress, right? Whereas if we were missing any of those skills, it could have had a different impact on how we made our choices. So, love is not just always roses and butterflies. You gotta have some toughness to it too.
Yeah, and it's so something that's coming up for me as you're talking about this is this idea that I'm trying to hold on to the thought. I'm like, I can feel it slipping. I'm like, hold on to it. But this idea that, oh no, where'd it go? Oh, when we think of self-love, and like you said, like the treating ourselves, right?
Yes.
Letting ourselves have the good things in life.
Yes.
I think especially in just kind of like for myself, I was a 90s kid and like growing up with Disney and princes and princesses and all this stuff. And it's like they show those stories are great, but they only show certain parts of those relationships and what
Yeah.
love and self-love can look like. And
Yeah.
one of the things that as I've gotten older, I found, and it's funny because it's also grounding,
Yeah.
but it's also like, dang, really? Because one of the things that I found is actually a big part of that love, like deep love, is continually showing up. It's doing the work, it's putting in the effort, which sometimes means
Right.
I can show myself love by actually doing the next right thing for me as
Right.
opposed to treating myself.
Yeah.
And that's not, and we can absolutely treat ourselves and we should, but it's
Yeah.
just this dichotomy of, well, it has, like, if I'm going to show myself love, I got to treat myself. And it's like, actually sometimes what you don't see in the Disney
Sometimes.
movies is actually putting in that work and
Yeah.
staying consistent to something
Yeah.
that can almost be more loving than treating yourself. And that's not to say, oh, I treated myself, now I messed up. It has nothing to do with that. It's just recognizing the different ways that love come out. And I mean, for those of you who have families, think about that. I mean, there's a lot of banality and drudge work and just like day to day, like, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
gotta make breakfast again. But
Yeah.
that's also part of the full package of love for others, which means it's also part of the full package for ourselves. That means, yes, it's okay to let ourselves let go a little bit and have that treat. And it's also okay to forgive ourselves if we're not perfect. And it's also
Yes.
okay, and part of loving ourselves, to stick with those commitments that we know fill us. Like I said, I don't
Yes.
like to do my exercise breaks and I rebel against it like I'm a freaking 4-year-old. Absolutely. Like I just don't want to do it. But in the long run, that is more self loving to me
Yeah.
because I know I'm also doing it in small enough ways that it's not detrimental. So if I
There
was
you
saying
go.
to show myself love, physically, right? I have to go to the gym 3 times a week for an hour and a half each time, and that's how it's got to be. Well, yeah, maybe there's some days where I'm sick and I don't
Right.
feel good. Or maybe days like
Right.
today when it's icy and I can't get to the gym. There's all those things where actually forcing myself to stick with that commitment might not be the best choice. But what I'm talking about is 5 minutes of exercise here, maybe
Yeah.
3 to 4 times a day. I can do that whether it's snowing or icing outside. I already
Yeah.
got 2 of those in today.
Nice.
It's not going to hurt me to do 5 minutes of exercise. So it's not going to actually be showing myself more love to not do it. It's actually going to pretty much always be me showing myself love by following through because it's small and not and doing it is not detrimental. So I'm not trying to work out 2 hours hardcore strength training, max reps when I have bronchitis. Like
Right.
I can have bronchitis and still walk up and down, the flight of stairs once. That's it. I can still do that. And that is still that commitment and showing that love. So that was one of the things that kind of came up that I feel like so much of the time we don't talk about, of just the mundane parts of love that really are part of
Necessary.
what, yeah. And that's part of what makes love full, not
Yeah.
just with others, but with
Right with
ourselves. It's,
ourselves.
you have the fun, right? You have the
Yes.
fun feelings and everything and the rewards, but then you also have that depth
Yes.
of commitment and true honoring of ourselves and feeding ourselves in whatever form that takes. So I don't know. Those are just some of the things
No,
that are
I
coming to
think those
mind
are
on
some
that.
awesome points. Like honestly, I think that's a fantastic point. Like going back to like we don't have to have 2 hour long workout sessions with crazy weights. Like ideally, right, we would want to have like the perfect schedule, sleep 8 hours a day, work out every day, work, have a nutritious meal, and this and that. But we're not robots. We're not,
Darn it.
we have feelings, we have, we have different temperaments. But the most
Mm-hmm.
beautiful part about it is that you can negotiate with yourself. You can do that. You can literally be like, okay, what am I willing to do? And why and how do I really want to achieve this? Right. And once you come up with a like for example, even if it's like, okay, like I'm not supposed to be eating these wings and these fries, but I'll do it because tomorrow I'm gonna do some legs.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to ebb and flow with your existence, with the experience that you're having is so important. Oftentimes, this is why in Power Body Soul, I'm really big on mindfulness. I'm really big on being present in the moment, because consider that if you spend your life and you're like not focused in the present moment, you're focused on the future. Are you really living right now? You're waiting for vacation to come. You're waiting for the weekend to come. You're waiting for the end of work to come. So at what moment in life are you able to actually experience your day or the way that you're feeling, right? Because that mentality is going to be what stays in your mind. So even when the
Mm-hmm.
weekend comes, now you're thinking about next weekend. And then when the vacation comes, then you're thinking about your next vacation. So when do you actually get to enjoy yourself? And being able to address those different pain points that we sometimes just overlook due to wanting to push forward, which is necessary in its own time and place. But there's also a time and place to reflect and be like, hey, how can I actually address my overall experience so that I can feel more fulfilled in my life? And sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
like we owe it to ourselves. We owe ourselves our time, our commitment, our compassion, right? If I eat healthy, I know that if I drink this milk, it's not going to sit with me right. I need to have, lactose milk or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I eat these carbs, that's not going to sit with me right, and being mindful of the experience we give ourselves, not so much about just kind of like vesting on the momentum that's brought upon our lives due to the different choices that are around us. Taking control, taking control and setting boundaries, basically the same thing, right? But that's one
Mm-hmm.
of the easiest ways to really just feel like I am in control of my life. I do love myself enough to be like, no, I'm not going to allow this to happen, or I'm going to do whatever I can to make this happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not easy trying to work out in the morning when it's cold, or at all in
Oh yeah.
general, or at all in general. But maybe that's not what it requires. Maybe it's just like, okay, well, let me just do some stretching, intentional
Mm-hmm.
stretching practices. Let me get this blood flowing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being creative with yourself, because you're not criticizing, instead you're looking for solutions. And just having that change in perspective can sometimes open the door to what it is you're looking for, having a balance.
Yeah, and that's a big thing about like kind of with Be Well, Care Well too. You know, a lot of times we come in and it's like, okay, how do we incorporate wellness into the day? And everyone's like, I don't want to work out or I don't want to eat healthy. And it's like that, okay, fine. We don't have to do that. Let's
Yeah,
take a small thing, you know,
yeah,
if you have a staff meeting once a month, maybe ending the staff meeting with, all right, everyone, let's just get up and just walk up and down the hallway a couple times. You know, people start to chat with each other because they're just standing next to each other.
yeah,
So they do that. Maybe by the end, you start to laugh a little bit. It maybe takes 2 to 3
yeah.
minutes total. And that can be something that's small, that's doable.
You
And
know,
so it's
I
all
love
about
that.
that.
I love that. Not only because you're implementing those healthy habits, but recognizing that part of self-love is also being sure that you're in a community that supports and uplifts you, right?
Mm-hmm,
Like if you have friends that are mean, are they really your friends? Or you
mm-hmm,
have friends that are not, being respectful towards you, like those kinds of situations are very real, especially in this day and age. You have to, when you're trying to improve yourself, you have to be in an environment that also supports that improvement, because psychology tells us we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, right? And if the people that you're around with are not trying to create this change, or at least create space for you to have this change, they're not respecting the different boundaries you're setting forth, or the different expectations that you're having for your own life, then you need to find that environment that's going to align itself with that. um,
mm-hmm.
because it's not just about eating right and working out. You have to make sure that your mental is on a good space, your emotional is a good space, and that your social also reflects that.
Mm-hmm.
So and what better place than to make sure that we're getting along with everyone around us.
Right. And that's just all part of it. So I cannot believe we are already at time,
Oh
but
my gosh,
I
seriously.
know, I know, but so we're gonna wrap for today.
Okay.
But you know, for those of you who are watching either live with us now or as you know, you're watching the replay, please feel free to share in the comments, you know, anything that was like an aha moment, or if you have an idea for something that you want to try in the future for self-love, or if you have done something that seems to work for you, please share that, you know, in the chat and comments with us. So again, I want to thank you, Luis, for joining us today and sharing some of these small fun ways and having this great conversation about kind of how to take that external love and turn it inwards. So we really appreciate your time. um, and as we're wrapping up, I want to make sure for those of you who are watching, make sure to follow Curricula Concepts on Facebook and Instagram so you don't miss another one of our Wellbeing Wednesdays. And please feel free to share and like this show, share it with friends, family, coworkers. And if you're a childcare provider and want to learn more about enrolling in Be Well, Care Well, you can visit curriculaconcepts.com/Be Well, Care Well, which I believe the information is in the chat. And then, Luis, did you have one last thought that you wanted to share?
Yes, I wanted to share one last thing and I'll let you guys go. So again, thank you guys so much for being here today and joining us, me and Susanna, for Wellbeing Wednesday. My name is Luis Mendoza of Power Body Soul. If you guys could reach out to me at Power Body Soul or at Power Body Soul Official. I wanted to have just one announcement to make in the spirit of self-love, right? I want to formally introduce, I have a new event coming out. It's called our Spring Equinox Experience. So it's going to be a 3-week program that I'm going to have released more information for soon. But to learn more, I need you to go to the website and sign up for our priority waitlist. You can get exclusive access to early bird sales, news, updates, and more details about this event. So again, thank you guys so much for your time, and we will catch you guys on the next one.
All right. Thank you so much, Luis. Sounds good. And for those of you who are still with us, thank you for sticking with us to the end. This has been another Wellbeing Wednesday. I'm your host, Susanna Creed, and I'm wishing you well until next time. Bye, everyone.